Good evening, everyone. Shavua Tov. Good week to all. It's an honor to join you this evening as we transition from the calm of Shabbat to the amazing energy of the conference that we're about to begin. On a personal note, this is my 35th AIPAC conference. So I'm especially excited to be our host for tonight. And please join me once again in thanking Josh, Sammy, and Colleen for this wonderful Havdalah moment. They'll be joining us later this evening along with members of the Howard University Choir, so there's more music to come. Our guests tonight are going to help bring to life the many ways that Israel is bringing game-changing solutions to other parts of the world. By way of a beginning to the story, more than 60 years ago, Israel's foreign minister, Golda Meir, saw how African countries didn't want to have much to do with Israel. As a way of opening diplomatic doors that were otherwise quite closed, she found ways to share the young country's knowledge and expertise with those countries. It was done in every possible field: agriculture, medicine, education, and defense. These connections led to others, and soon this connectivity between Israel and all these other countries was based on knowledge sharing and training. Today, Israel's footprint in emerging market countries is more important than ever. To give us some more context and some more color about Israel's work around the world, please welcome a good friend and a very special guest, the director of MASHAV, which is Israel's Agency for International Development, or the development wing of the Foreign Ministry, Ambassador Gil Haskel. Welcome. Gil, thanks for joining us. I'd like to begin by congratulating you and MASHAV. I believe this year marks the 60th anniversary of the organization and its work.
Yes, it does.
And I understand you have a special guest in the audience today.
Well, thank you, Wendy, and Shavua Tov. And yes, as you mentioned earlier, that Golda Meir, at the time Foreign Minister and Prime Minister to be, established MASHAV literally 60 years ago. And Golda then became Prime Minister between the years 1969 and 1974. And I'm very humbled and proud to introduce to you today Shaul Rechavi, Golda Meir's grandson, who is joining us here today. Shaul, maybe you stand up so everybody can recognize you.
Gil, can you share with us MASHAV today? What are its main mission and its main goals?
Well, funnily enough, the main missions of MASHAV today are very similar to the ones that were given to MASHAV when it was established by Golda Meir. And the main objective of MASHAV is to bring the best from the State of Israel to any country in need on this planet that has diplomatic relations with Israel or does not have diplomatic relations with Israel, in order to fulfill development for countries, for communities, and for individuals. As MASHAV, we are joining the international effort of leaving no one behind. And this is part of the diplomatic tool that Israel is trying to exercise and bring to the world.
I'm noticing that you said again that it's with countries that Israel has diplomatic relations with and doesn't have diplomatic relations.
Exactly.
So in some ways that lever has stayed the same 6 decades later.
I'll tell you, Wendy, we are open, and we make this very public. We're open to work with any country in need that is willing to receive aid from Israel.
So you've traveled extensively around the world and have worked with government leaders and private sector leaders, and you've done scores of projects. What's one project that you're especially inspired by?
Wow, that's a tricky question, since in the last 60 years we've trained almost 300,000 individuals, and we've worked accumulatively in 140 different countries in scores of projects. But if I try to crystallize and find one very or highly exciting and emotional one, I would say it's the missions of eye surgeons that we send to developing countries. And they perform cataract surgery, which is something quite basic and quite simple. But for those countries, it's I would say, an eye-opening operation. And when you see a line of patients standing to be performed on, and they're all blind, and the first thing they see when their eyes are opened is a smiling Israeli doctor, I think that's something that is always exciting.
Wow. Gil, it's always inspiring to hear about the work that you do. I'd love to hear more, maybe a cup of coffee when we get back.
I prefer drinks, but coffee is also fine.
Drinks it is. Thank you. Please join me in thanking Ambassador Gil Haskel. Take care. Shavua tov.
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you, AIPAC.
In just a few weeks, a new documentary is premiering, which tells the story of Israel's work around the globe. Produced by the Christian Broadcasting Network, the feature film, To Life, is an important look into this story. Tonight, we're getting a special preview of the film, and then we're going to meet two individuals in the movie and in the movie trailer who have dedicated their lives to the work of Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. Friends, To Life.
Eight million people across Nepal are struggling to recover
after the worst disaster Nepal has seen in nearly a century.
Panic in the streets of Kathmandu.
Absolutely no electricity in this area. There's no water supply.
300 million people in Africa still don't have access to clean water.
The United Nations declared years ago that access to water and sanitation is a human right.
Without it, human life cannot exist.
Water on tap in the home is a luxury.
Chaos tonight here on the island of Lesbos.
There's really no end in sight to this crisis. Syrians, Iraqis, and
desperate refugees braving a life or death journey.
So many are dying in this narrow sea between Turkey and Greece.
A number of boats coming in this morning, and this one seems to have lots of children on board.
One, two, three. It begins.
There is no electricity, no energy. Water exists beneath their feet. What they need is a few solar panels so that we can pump the water.
Children are coming to Israel. We operate them. We host them until the operation is done and the recovery time is done. They go back home.
People just come with nothing on them, just the clothes, babies, old people, handicapped.
At this moment, History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
Can't sit at home, see this, and not help.
The rescue team that we brought here are specialized in urban rescues.
They told us that they hear somebody alive, a young girl missing.
It doesn't matter what color they are, what size they are, not only our privilege, but our duty.
This is how change starts.
The real Israel, it's what we are doing here.
We were asking for help for everybody, like Nepalese military personnel and lots of foreigners also. And IsraAID come straight from the airport and started digging up. And the thing they have and others didn't have is faith and hope. They found Krishna Kumari.
For me, I am Syrian. For me, there is no problem if I am meeting Israeli people. They are really helping us and helping a lot of families here and children.
No longer sick, no longer weak. I'm going to play like other children.
I never interacted with people from the other side, the Jewish people, but now we interact with a lot of people. You get to know people as individuals. It's a very good experience.
They are really so special to my family.
Please join me in welcoming Sivan Ya'ari from Innovation Africa and from IsraAID, Yotam Polizer. Have a seat right over there. Thanks for joining us. Sivan, you represent Power Africa, Innovation Africa, an NGO that brings solar power and clean water to underserved rural communities in Africa. What motivated you to start this project?
Well, first, I would like to say Shavua Tov to all of you, and thank you, Wendy, for inviting me. I would like to take a moment, with your permission, to just say thank you again to CBN, because I don't think many people know, but they not only filmed the movie, they were actually also donors. They are the one who allowed us to bring the solar energy to the villages, the Israeli water technologies, the drip irrigation. And so I really want to say thank you to Gordon Robertson and CBN, because it really shows that together, Jews and Christians bringing Israeli technologies, we can do a lot together. So I just wanted to mention it. So now how it's all started. I was born in Israel. My father was not a diplomat working in Africa. He was not a businessman. Really, there was no reason for me to be in Africa. And when I was younger, my husband, my father was unemployed, and at some point he said, we have to leave Israel. We moved to France. My parents couldn't find a job. They opened a pizzeria. We sold pizza. And after a few years of having pizza for every dinner, every lunch, every breakfast, and I'm not joking, and I was that big, I told my parents I have to go and look for better nutrition. And so I joined the army as a volunteer. I went to the army. I served for about 2 years. And after, when I was 20 years old, I'm in Israel, and I was looking for a job. And then I met someone. I met the owner of Jordache Jeans. Do you know Jordache Jeans? Jordache, I met him. And I asked him for a job. He said, well, you are lovely, which I was. But your English is not good. So I said, you know, I speak French. He said, if you speak French, I have a job for you. I have a factory in Madagascar where they speak French. And why don't you go and do quality control to the jeans? I said, Madagascar, where it is? He said, it's in Africa. And this is how, 19 years ago, I was 20 years old. And that's when I first went to Africa. And so the more time I spent in the villages, the more I realized that there are so many challenges. But the main challenge was the lack of energy. Because there is no energy, and even today, you have 600 million people in Africa without access to energy. And without energy, they cannot have access to vaccines and medicines because there is no refrigeration in medical center. No energy, they cannot have access to good education. But most importantly, no energy means they cannot have access to clean water. So I've been spending time in the villages and I'm seeing children searching for water. And yet, there is so much water beneath their feet in the aquifers. All they need is a little bit of energy to pump the water. So I went back to Israel and then to the US. I got my master's in energy from Columbia. And as a student, I started bringing very simple Israeli technologies to pump water, to bring energy, drip irrigation to remote villages. So today, 10 years after, we have done and installed Israeli technologies in 180 villages.
Amazing.
Thank you. We work in 8 African countries, and we have provided light and water to over 1 million people.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Thank you. Yotam, over to you. The disaster relief that IsraAID and its volunteers are doing in some pretty difficult spots around the world has been well documented and lauded around the world. Can you share with us, what was your first experience with IsraAID?
So, first of all, I'm so honored to be here and with Sivan and this beautiful video by CBN, and at AIPAC it's already my 3rd time in a row here, and it's great to be here. I started, like every Israeli after the army, I went to India. we call it the Hummus Trail. So I went in the Hummus Trail, and the Hummus Trail led me to Nepal. And in Nepal, I fell in love with the people, and I was volunteering with street children. And I learned a very useful language, Nepalese. So I didn't think it would be useful. It actually proved to be extremely helpful after the earthquake in 2015. And after spending 3 years in Nepal, I was finally ready to go back to Israel and start my life. And then a terrible disaster happened in March 2011, the tsunami in Japan. So 4 days after the tsunami, I was called to lead a relief mission to Japan, to Fukushima. And I thought to myself, I always loved sushi, so why not? And I found myself on an empty plane to Japan. Everyone was running away from the radiation. And that's when I started my real hobby, which was, my dream was to have my own private jet, but I didn't have the money, so I go to all these places that people are running away from. So it was in the tsunami, and then after in the Ebola in 2014, and a few other places. So I spent 3 years in Japan, studied a language that's a bit more important, Japanese, a bit more useful, and we did a trauma counseling program for about 3,000 children who lost their parents in Japan after the tsunami. And again, I was ready to go back home and start my life, and then the Ebola outbreak started in Sierra Leone. So I went to Sierra Leone and spent about a year there. And then, again, when things were under control in the Ebola, the earthquake in Nepal happened. And in Nepal, I think you saw it in this video, in this trailer, and I can't wait to see the full movie, because one of the unbelievable operations that our team performed there was the rescue of the last survivor of the Nepalese earthquake. It's a lady named Krishna Kumari, who was trapped under the rubble for 130 hours. for 6 days without food or water. And our team pulled out 21 dead bodies before they were able to pull her alive. And she survived without food or water. It's an unbelievable story. And the last piece that's really, for me personally, is the most meaningful in the work that we're doing recently is the work with the Syrian refugees. And we work a lot with them in Jordan, in Greece, and in Germany. And you've seen these boats, 5,000 to 7,000 people arriving every day on rubber boats. And the first people they see when they reach the shores of Lesbos are this group of Israelis, both Jews and Arabs. So we always joke that they probably think they took the wrong boat. They probably think they ended up in Haifa or God knows where. But really, it's an unbelievable opportunity not only to save lives, but also to build bridges and to change people's perspective. And we know how important it is today.
Very powerful. Sivan, what's next for Innovation Africa? I mean, how do you begin to scale this extraordinary work?
You see, although we helped 1 million people, it's still very little compared to the challenge that exists now in Africa. So our vision, hopefully, is to get to 1,000 villages and to bring water and light to about 6 million people by 2025. Wow. So to do so, with your permission, we just added 2 new team members to help Innovation Africa. And we have Dov Lipman, former member of Knesset. Dov, if you can say hello, who joined us. And maybe many of you know Ilana Decker, who worked for AIPAC for 17 years and now joined us. And so,
we all know Ilana.
She's wonderful. And so hopefully together, and with the help of more people, more bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, more synagogues, schools, corporations together coming and adapting villages, village by village, bringing water, bringing drip irrigation, electricity, traveling with us to the villages, and hopefully we will get there. And I would like just to add one more thing, Wendy, with your permission, is that I truly believe that only now, only today, we can truly fulfill God's promise to Abraham to be a light into the nation. And God told Abraham, I will make you a great nation, and you will be a blessing. And through you, through your descendants, the families of the world will be blessed. And so today, with all of the innovations that are coming out of Israel, such a small country, I don't think it's a miracle. I don't think it's an accident. I think it was always meant to be. I think it's all part of the greater plan. And that through the innovation, through Israeli technologies, together, Jews and Israeli, we can truly go and bring the blessing and make this world a better place. So we have a choice to make.
Yotam, this past year, IsraAID was in Houston, Florida, California, and Puerto Rico. In fact, you told me a little bit more about this when we were together at a Shabbat dinner at the home of Yossi and Susan with Senator Kamala Harris a few weeks ago. What are you still doing in Puerto Rico?
So I was just there. I was just in Puerto Rico 2 weeks ago, and you know, it's a very difficult situation. Still about 40% of the population don't have electricity. So actually we're doing work that's in a way inspired by the work that Sivan is doing in Africa, because we're bringing water engineers from Israel who actually provide the local people access to clean water using water filters, using solar panels, and different Israeli technology. And we're planning to stay there for at least another year, working together both with the Jewish and the non-Jewish community. And here with us we have Niv, who is the head of our team in Houston, because we're still working in Houston and other places. And our goal in the US is not only to provide this immediate support, but actually to engage many more American volunteers in our work, both young professionals, doctors, nurses, psychologists, engineers, and a lot of college students who are joining as part of our IsraAID Humanitarian Fellowship. So we're really looking at this humanitarian crisis not only as an opportunity to save lives, but an opportunity to build bridges between Israel, the US, and the world.
Sivan and Yotam, thank you for the remarkable work that you do, and we look forward to hearing more about it when the film comes out. Thank you for joining us. After the Israel Moment clip that you're about to see, it is my pleasure to welcome back to the stage my co-host, Josh Warshawski. Thank you. Shavua Tov.